Millionaire cheated on his pregnant wife and took her off the will, but her comeback left him penniless. Spencer Donovan appeared to have it all: a sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, high-profile business connections, and a bright future as the head of a multi-million-dollar finance empire. Adored by the media for his philanthropic gestures, praised by colleagues for his razor-sharp mind, he seemed unstoppable. Yet behind the gleaming facade lay a secret that threatened to rip his life apart, a mistress lurking in the shadows, a pregnant wife left in the dark, and a final betrayal so cunning it would leave everyone gasping. Before long, a shocking twist of fate and a formidable comeback would knock Spencer from his gilded throne, costing him everything he had ever worked for. Spencer Donovan was not born into wealth. As a child in a cramped apartment near the outskirts of Pittsburgh, he fantasized about a grand life that soared above the steel-gray smokestacks and eternal scent of factory fumes. Even at 10 years old, Spencer had a rare determination, driven by the conviction that he was destined for greatness. He devoured magazines featuring flashy corporate tycoons, enthralled by stories of fortunes made and empires expanded. Upon receiving a partial scholarship, he studied finance at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where he learned not just from textbooks, but from observing the opulent lifestyles of his wealthier peers. This experience fueled his ambition further, making him vow to surpass every competitor in his path. After graduating with honors, he ventured into hedge fund management, soon catching the attention of established investors who saw promise in his fearless approach to risk. By 30, he launched Donovan Capital, a specialized finance firm that quickly made waves in venture capital deals and technology IPOs. Within a few years, Spencer's golden streak turned him into a self-made millionaire. He purchased a modern architectural marvel high in the Hollywood Hills, complete with glass walls and sprawling views of Los Angeles. Rumor had it he had a holding stake in Tesla, which multiplied his wealth when the stock price soared, turning him into a minor celebrity in financial circles. He attended exclusive galas, rubbed shoulders with actors and billionaire entrepreneurs, and even made philanthropic gestures by donating generously to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's new wing, seeking to cement his brand as both shrewd financier and cultured benefactor. That was how he met Eliza Williams, later Eliza Donovan, a gentle yet determined soul. She was the daughter of a respected art historian and volunteered extensively for museum events. Eliza's deep brown eyes and calm demeanor initially intrigued Spencer, but it was her intelligence and subtle confidence that fully captivated him. After a whirlwind courtship, they married in a lavish ceremony held at a centuries-old estate outside Santa Barbara. Society pages raved over the perfect union between a man who owned a rising empire and a woman radiating grace and warmth. No one could foresee how swiftly their marital vows would be tested, nor predict the dark choices Spencer would make when a whisper of temptation lured him away. Years passed, and Donovan Capital ballooned in both size and reputation. Spencer negotiated colossal deals, often behind closed doors in the skyscraper offices that overlooked the Los Angeles skyline. The more his fortune expanded, the more unassailable he felt. He was known to close 7-figure negotiations at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown LA, showcasing an almost uncanny knack for reading market trends before anyone else. As his professional clout grew, so did the demands on his time. He traveled, constantly jetting off to New York to finalize real estate partnerships, flying to London to pitch hedge fund expansions, and occasionally sneaking away to exotic beach resorts under the guise of business retreats. The marriage that once seemed so idyllic began to show cracks. Eliza understood the pressures of his work and tried her best to accommodate them, But she also yearned for the version of Spencer she had married, the one who would spend quiet evenings discussing art exhibits and philanthropic projects. Instead, he arrived home late, enveloped in business calls and thick tension. At the same time, Eliza discovered she was pregnant, a dream they had shared since their engagement. The news filled her with joy and trepidation in equal measure, given Spencer's constant absences. She fantasized about telling him in a magical moment, perhaps cooking his favorite meal and revealing a pair of baby shoes wrapped in a ribbon. But the tension between them made her hesitate. He seemed more stressed, more preoccupied with a new wave of investors who had given him substantial funds to manage. So Eliza bided her time, waiting for the perfect moment to share life-changing news. Unbeknownst to Eliza, Spencer had already begun crossing boundaries. It started innocently enough. A flirtatious smile with a coworker, a drink too many at a conference, or a suggestive text message that promised a secret rendezvous. Yet innocence was fleeting. Soon, he found himself irresistibly drawn to a young, sharp-witted marketing consultant named Tanya Morales, hired to elevate Donovan Capital's brand. Tanya was everything Eliza was not: bold, adventurous, and willing to feed Spencer's ego at every turn. Their initial attraction was purely physical. Still, as Tanya expertly flattered him, remarking on his intelligence, praising his innovative approach to investments, Spencer felt a jolt of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. He convinced himself it was just a harmless distraction, a way to cope with the unrelenting pressure. Little did he know that this affair would trigger a series of betrayals, culminating in a catastrophic upheaval of his life. The affair between Spencer and Tanya blossomed in clandestine meetings. Expensive hotels in Santa Monica, secret dinners at exclusive restaurants where no one recognized them, and surreptitious text messages exchanged while Eliza slept were all part of this risky new normal. Spencer's staff noticed changes in his behavior. He started delegating tasks he once handled personally, claiming he needed more strategic thinking time. In truth, these unscheduled hours were spent with Tanya, who was more than happy to dance around moral lines if it meant lavish gifts and access to the upper echelons of wealth. Meanwhile, at home, Eliza sensed something was amiss. Spencer's late returns became routine, and the affectionate morning coffees they once shared turned into quick pecks on the cheek as he rushed out the door. She tried not to jump to conclusions, attributing his detachment to the demands of his career. Still, dread knotted in her stomach each time he brushed off her attempts at intimacy or seemed impatient when she spoke about the future, a future that now included a child he didn't even know about yet. Determined to rekindle their connection, Eliza announced a special dinner at home. She spent hours preparing his favorite dish, a delicate herb-crusted salmon, hoping that a romantic setting would break through whatever wall he directed. But when Spencer finally walked in, he carried a faint smell of unfamiliar perfume. She asked if he'd met with clients. He nodded dismissively, eyes darting to his phone. Even after seeing the candlelit table and rose petals arranged tastefully around the room, he appeared restless, repeatedly checking for new messages. "Can't you put the phone away for just one evening?" she pleaded, forcing a smile. Spencer sighed, rolling his shoulders as if to shake off tension. "We're negotiating a major overseas deal. It could be worth millions." He kissed her forehead but said nothing more. As they ate in uncomfortable silence, Eliza's heart pounded with unspoken questions. She had no idea that Spencer was mentally replaying the afternoon's steamy rendezvous with Tanya, struggling to feign normalcy. Guilt gnawed at him, but it was overshadowed by the heady thrill of the affair. At that moment, he resolved to keep Tanya in his life, no matter the moral cost. Eliza Donovan had never thought of herself as a secretive person. She grew up in a household where honesty was valued above all else. where even the smallest deception was considered a crack in one's character. Yet, in the last few weeks, she had found herself harboring the most significant secret of her life. She was pregnant with Spencer's child. Initially, she wanted to create a beautiful moment, to share the news, perhaps a candle-lit dinner or a heartfelt gift, but the tension between them had made that feel impossible. Spencer was increasingly distant, always on his phone or disappearing into late-night meetings. Every time Eliza tried to schedule a conversation, some crisis at Donovan Capital stole his attention. Fearful he would leave town on yet another business trip, she decided she could no longer wait. That Saturday morning, she carefully tucked the ultrasound photo into her cardigan pocket. For the past hour, she had paced the living room, building up the courage to confront her own husband about a life-changing event that should have united them. She noticed from the second-floor landing that his home office door was slightly ajar. The rhythmic tapping of his laptop keyboard filtered into the hallway. It felt like a metaphor for their marriage, close but never quite fully open. With each step she took, her heart beat faster until she stood in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. Spencer, hunched over the desk, was immersed in numbers on his screen earnings projections, possibly, or a presentation he planned to show investors. Papers with Donovan Capital's logo lay scattered around him, some bearing scribbled notes about upcoming deals. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, suggesting he had been at work for hours, even on a weekend. "Eliza," he said, looking up with a fleeting smile, "I didn't hear you come in." She could see lines of fatigue etched under his eyes, or maybe it was stress. Suddenly she felt a wave of compassion. For all of Spencer's flaws, his ambition was undeniably driven by a desire to prove himself, a trait she had once admired. Yet something about him was different these days, as though a wedge had been driven between his professional aspirations and his moral compass. "I have something to show you," she managed, stepping forward. Her hand trembled slightly as she retrieved the ultrasound image from her pocket. Handing it to him felt like letting go of a precious secret she had protected for far too long. Spencer's brow furrowed at first, uncertain what he was looking at. Slowly, realization spread across his face. "Is this an ultrasound?" he asked, voice low, almost disbelieving. She nodded, her lips curving in a tentative smile. "I'm pregnant, Spencer. I've known for about 6 weeks now." For a moment, he said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the tiny, grainy shape in the photo, the suggestion of a new life forming, unmistakably bearing his DNA. She watched his expression cycle through surprise, then something akin to alarm. Finally, he swallowed hard. That's big news," he whispered, carefully setting the picture on the desk. Then he stood and reached out, pulling her into a half-embrace. His touch felt warm, yet oddly mechanical, as if his mind wasn't in the room. Eliza's heart sank. She had imagined a dozen scenarios of tears, laughter, or simple, unspoken joy. Instead, he seemed weighed down by obligations rather than lifted by fatherly excitement. She tried to steady her voice, searching his eyes. "I wanted to tell you in a better way, but you've been so busy, and I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. Are you okay?" Spencer rubbed the back of his neck, releasing her from the awkward hug. "I'm just caught off guard. With the firm expanding into those international deals, I wasn't expecting this." Eliza's chest tightened. She had known he might worry about timing. He was always looking at spreadsheets, projecting risks and rewards, but she had hoped their child would transcend cold calculations. "I understand it's not perfect timing, but we've talked about children before," she said, her voice cracking with a hopeful edge. "I thought maybe we could plan together." "Yes, of course," he replied, shuffling some papers on his desk, as though the conversation were an unwelcome intrusion. "I'll support you. It's just a lot right now." Before she could press further, his phone vibrated on the table. Instantly, his gaze darted to the screen. He picked it up with a terse apology and walked toward the door, muttering something about a crucial investor call. Within seconds, he slipped into the corridor, leaving her alone in the office. Eliza blinked, her eyes tearing up, as she realized just how anticlimactic the moment had become. On the other side of the hallway, Spencer stared at his phone, reading a text from Tanya Morales. She wanted to know when he could sneak away again. Her tone was flirtatious, a blend of confidence and jealousy. If only she knew he had just found out he was going to be a father. Even while standing in his own home, his wife carrying his unborn child, Spencer felt a magnetic pull toward Tanya's audacity. He typed a quick reply, reassuring her he'd make time soon. The thrill of the affair, tinged with guilt, coursed through his veins. When he returned to the office, Eliza was gone, though the ultrasound photo still lay on his desk, a silent accusation. He picked it up, peering at it as a wave of conflicting emotions surged within him. On one hand, a child was something he and Eliza had once talked about with genuine excitement. On the other, he felt tethered to a wife he had emotionally drifted from, burdened by fatherhood at a moment when Donovan Capital was on the cusp of unprecedented expansion. Eliza, meanwhile, retreated to the bedroom they shared, tears streaking her cheeks. She set a hand on her stomach, feeling the slight swell that had just begun to show. He's supposed to be happy, she thought, anger and sadness mingling in her mind. We've wanted this for so long. When did things change so drastically? Hours later, Spencer left the house altogether, claiming he had urgent business downtown. Eliza knew enough not to ask who the meeting was with. The old version of her might have demanded answers, but the new, uncertain woman in her reflection wasn't ready to face the possibility that he was lying, and with whom. As night fell, she drifted off to a fitful sleep in an empty bed, haunted by the realization that the man she loved could not muster the simple joy of impending fatherhood. No matter how she tried to dismiss it, the truth pressed in on her heart. Whatever new dimension Spencer had found outside their marriage, whatever enchantment he experienced in those furtive text messages, was rapidly eclipsing the vow they had once cherished. Her pregnancy, which ought to have been a sacred bond, had become something Spencer viewed more as an inconvenience than a miracle. And that betrayal, subtle though it was in his behavior, would be the tipping point that set their entire world on a collision course no one could have foreseen. While Eliza grappled with the complexities of pregnancy, morning sickness, hormonal changes, and emotional ups and downs, Spencer reveled in the high-stakes environment of Donovan Capital more than ever. Fresh investment waves were coming from major tech moguls, and he found himself at the center of multi-million-dollar decisions. CNN Business even interviewed him about emerging stock trends, an appearance that boosted his credibility and drew more clients to his doorstep. His meetings with Tanya continued unabated. She played a critical role in revamping Donovan Capital's public image, orchestrating press releases that showcased Spencer as a visionary leader. She also served as a confidant, listening to him complain about the stress at home and the responsibilities of pending fatherhood. Tanya, cunning and worldly, recognized she had a pivotal opportunity to deepen her hold on Spencer. She cooed at him with lines like, "You shouldn't have to sacrifice your entire life just because you're about to have a child," playing into the quiet resentments he harbored. The two soon developed an audacious routine of mixing business and pleasure. During lunch breaks, they snuck out to luxurious boutique hotels in West Hollywood, laughing at the danger of their secret. Over post-coital discussions, they hashed out marketing strategies that would further inflate Donovan Capital's profile. Spencer found the adrenaline rush of living a double life oddly invigorating. He was forging colossal deals while indulging in a taboo affair. What could be more thrilling? At home, Eliza noticed how his calls stretched into late nights and how he often seemed mentally absent whenever she discussed baby names or nursery plans. When she timidly raised the possibility of attending her prenatal checkups together, he offered half-hearted excuses. "I've got a critical client meeting," or "I need to finalize an acquisition in Seattle," became his standard lines. Though disappointed, Eliza tried to remain patient, convincing herself that once the baby arrived, Spencer would step up and become the engaged father she believed he could be. Little did she know that while she booked prenatal yoga classes and researched child-safe paints for the nursery walls, Spencer was also researching ways to restructure his will, an idea planted by Tanya, who insisted on protecting his legacy in case anything went wrong. The line between rational decision-making and unscrupulous maneuvering grew ever thinner as Spencer's thirst for power and for Tanya continued to overshadow his moral compass. As the pregnancy advanced, cracks in Spencer and Eliza's marriage widened. She tried to keep optimism alive, hosting a small gender reveal gathering for close friends. Pink and blue decorations decked the living room of their Los Angeles mansion, and guests sipped champagne while making light-hearted guesses. Spencer arrived late, complaining of back-to-back meetings. Despite Eliza's attempts to include him in the excitement, he hovered at the edge of conversations, constantly checking his phone for Tanya's messages. Guests sensed the tension. A few whispered concerns to Eliza, asking if everything was all right. She forced a smile, attributing his aloofness to work overload. Still, her eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed publicly. She wished for that partner who once fawned over every detail of their wedding, the man who used to take her on spontaneous trips to Napa Valley just because she loved the vineyards. In private moments, Spencer's behavior oscillated between distant politeness and outright indifference. He would place a hand on her belly when she asked, but there was no genuine warmth, no spontaneous embrace. If Eliza mentioned baby supplies or doctor visits, he would nod absent-mindedly, then pivot the conversation back to business or technology news. Once, she found him on a late-night call with Tanya, whispering in hushed, urgent tones. He brushed off her questions, claiming it was merely a sensitive corporate deal. Frustrated and heartbroken, Eliza contemplated confiding in close friends, but she worried about airing her marital issues so publicly. She had always prided herself on being the calm, steady anchor in Spencer's life, and she clung to that role, hoping he would eventually see reason. She suggested marriage counseling, but he balked, muttering something about it being a waste of time. Through it all, the baby grew, a silent witness to the unraveling union. Eliza found solace in prepping for motherhood, reading baby books, ordering nursery furniture, and practicing breathing exercises recommended by her obstetrician. Each day, she prayed that Spencer would remember his vows before it was too late. But unbeknownst to her, events were already set in motion. Tanya had begun whispering a new idea into Spencer's ear, that the forthcoming baby might jeopardize his fortune, and that it was time to consider removing Eliza from certain legal protections in his estate plan. Tanya's suggestion about the will started off casually during a late-night brainstorming session that had nothing to do with Donovan Capital. Draped in silk sheets at a discreet penthouse suite, Tanya teased Spencer about how generous he was. "You give so much to the world," she purred, "but what about protecting yourself?" Spencer, drunk on lust and the thrill of secrecy, asked her to elaborate. Tanya had a background in corporate strategy and understood legal nuances enough to stoke his fears. "The child is coming, and that's wonderful," she said, feigning sincerity. "But maybe you should secure your personal assets, just in case. Your empire is at a critical point of expansion. A messy divorce or an opportunistic spouse could destroy everything you've built." Spencer's eyes narrowed, torn between moral hesitation and the seed of paranoia Tanya had planted. "Eliza and I aren't divorcing," he replied, though even saying the word made his stomach twist with dread. But Tanya's words lingered, feeding off the growing distance he felt toward his wife. Over the next few weeks, Tanya stoked these fears further, citing examples of acquaintances who lost fortunes to alimony and child support battles. Eventually, Spencer sought the counsel of a high-profile attorney who specialized in shielding assets. The attorney outlined a plan to restructure Spencer's estate, effectively limiting Eliza's legal claim to his wealth should their marriage fail. What began as a protection measure soon ballooned into a more controversial move. Spencer decided to remove Eliza as the primary beneficiary of his will, replacing her with a charitable trust that he quietly controlled alongside private provisions for Tanya if they stayed together long enough. It was a cold, calculated act. Even Spencer felt a twinge of remorse as he signed the revised documents in a discreet Beverly Hills law office. But each pang of guilt was offset by Tanya's reassurance that he was being proactive. "You're just ensuring your legacy, darling," she told him, tracing a finger along his shoulder in a way that made him melt. "No one will blame you for taking care of your empire." He told himself it was only a precaution, that Eliza would never find out and that they would never actually divorce. Yet as he walked out of the law firm, legal papers in hand, he couldn't shake the looming sense that he had just committed a betrayal far greater than his affair. Eliza was 7 months pregnant when she stumbled upon documents that would shatter her remaining trust. She had been searching for a file in Spencer's home office. Her name typed neatly on a label caught her eye. It seemed odd. She couldn't recall placing any personal medical records in his drawer. With Spencer away at a conference in San Francisco, in reality, he was with Tanya. Curiosity got the better of her. She opened the file to find copies of estate planning papers, a newly revised will, trust agreements, and signatures from Spencer's attorney. At first, she couldn't make sense of the legal jargon, but one detail stood out in horrifying clarity. Eliza had been removed as the primary beneficiary. In fact, she had been stripped of nearly every significant financial right, replaced by a network of trusts, corporate entities, and other individuals. Shock rippled through her as she realized the enormity of what Spencer had done. Why would he choose to exclude the mother of his unborn child from his estate, effectively disinheriting her? Her heartbeat thundered, rage blending with heartbreak. She reread the documents multiple times, hoping she had misunderstood. But the legal language was unequivocal. Spencer Donovan had taken deliberate steps to protect his fortune from her. Her immediate impulse was to call him, to confront him with righteous fury. But she hesitated, spurred by an instinct that perhaps she needed more information before tipping her hand. She took photos of every page with her phone, documenting the betrayal in detail. She also noticed references to another set of documents, likely stored in the same firm that managed Donovan Capital's legal affairs. A plan began to form in the back of her mind. She might need a good attorney of her own. Staring at the evidence, Eliza felt her baby kick softly, as if responding to her turmoil. Tears filled her eyes. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "It's going to be okay." But in her heart, she wasn't sure how anything could be okay when her husband was actively working against her and the child they had both once dreamed of. While Eliza grappled with confusion and betrayal, Spencer continued his secret life of luxury and deception, utterly oblivious to the storm gathering just behind the facade of his marital home. In the days that followed, Eliza's shock transformed into a steely determination. She realized that heartbreak alone would not protect her unborn child's future. If Spencer was capable of disinheriting her without remorse, who knew what else he might do? The cruelty of it all lit a fire in her, a realization that love, had blinded her to a dangerous reality. She resolved to fight back, but not with the rash anger that might sabotage her efforts. Instead, she would be methodical, precise. Her first step was to consult a family friend, Patricia Chen, who happened to be an experienced attorney specializing in estate law. Arranging a secret meeting at an upscale cafe in Westwood, Eliza showed Patricia the documents she'd discovered. Patricia's professional veneer cracked as she read, "This is severe," she muttered. "He's essentially left you with minimal financial rights. If things go south, you could end up with almost nothing." Patricia then asked if Eliza had any suspicion that Spencer might be planning a divorce, or if he was involved with someone else. Eliza opened and closed her mouth, torn about how much to reveal, but eventually confided her suspicions about an affair. She recounted the nights Spencer stayed out late, the constant phone notifications, and the gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. Patricia's eyes hardened with empathy. "He's building a wall around his assets," she said gravely. "Typically, that means he anticipates a legal conflict." The conversation turned towards strategy. They discussed the possibility of a post-nuptial agreement that Eliza could propose, under the guise of clarifying their shared estate before the baby arrived. They also considered a potential paternity test, ensuring the baby's rights were safeguarded from day one. But Patricia warned her that revealing her hand too soon could backfire. He could accelerate his plans or hide assets more effectively, she cautioned. "If you think he's capable of that, timing will be everything." Eliza nodded, her eyes focused. She refused to let her unborn child be robbed of a stable future by a father who valued money more than family. "I'll move carefully," she promised, "but I'm done playing the naive wife." Before leaving, Patricia handed her a business card of a renowned private investigator. "If you want concrete evidence of this affair, if it exists, you'll need proof. It will strengthen your position legally if things become contentious." Eliza tucked the card into her wallet, chest tight with a mix of fear and determination. A new chapter of her life had begun, one where she would protect herself and her child at all costs, even if it meant dismantling the illusions she had once held dear. Oblivious to Eliza's discoveries, Spencer continued to shuttle between high-stakes deals and secretive trysts with Tanya. The synergy between them extended beyond the bedroom. Tanya skillfully orchestrated Donovan Capital's public image, while Spencer landed exclusive meetings with big-time celebrities and foreign investors. Their success soared. Clients raved about the firm's marketing brilliance, attributing it to Spencer's newfound vision. He laughed internally at the irony. His supposed vision was fueled by the same reckless appetite that drove him to chase Tanya in the first place. Meanwhile, on the other side of Los Angeles, Eliza discreetly reached out to the private investigator recommended by Patricia Chen. The man introduced himself as Thomas Delacroix, an ex-police detective with a specialization in high-profile marital cases. Meeting in a nondescript diner, Eliza handed over a photo of Spencer and told Thomas everything her suspicions. The will documents, the feeling that time was running out. Thomas listened intently, nodding gravely as he jotted down notes. "I'll track his whereabouts, see if there's an affair or financial impropriety," he told her. Evidence can shift the balance of power in divorce proceedings, especially if you're dealing with hidden assets or infidelity. Not wanting to raise Spencer's suspicion, Eliza began adopting a calm, almost detached demeanor at home. She no longer pressed him about his absences or asked him to join her in prenatal visits. Spencer, emboldened by her seeming indifference, assumed his plan was working. He congratulated himself for avoiding any explosive confrontations, failing to suspect that Eliza was quietly gathering ammunition for a battle he had unwittingly initiated. As the pregnancy crept into its 8th month, Eliza became more acutely aware of her child's fragility. She found solace in journaling, documenting every kick, every craving, and every hope she had for the baby's future. Each time she wrote, she felt the discrepancy between the joy a new mother should feel and the grim reality she was facing. On a rare evening when Spencer actually returned before 10 p.m., Eliza prepared a simple dinner. They spoke about benign topics, her health, his business, both tiptoeing around the growing tension. In the back of her mind, Eliza wondered how he could act so calmly knowing he'd effectively wiped her from his estate. In Spencer's mind, that thought only surfaced as a vague twinge of guilt, overshadowed by the excitement of a new text from Tanya, who sent a photo of herself wearing expensive lingerie he had bought. Thus, they continued living parallel lives, their marriage now a facade built on secrets and silent war plans. Thomas Delacroix's investigation yielded swift results. After just 2 weeks of tailing Spencer, he presented Eliza with damning photographic evidence. Spencer and Tanya entering exclusive hotels together, lingering kisses captured in blurry lens frames, dinners that were unmistakably romantic in nature. Thomas also unearthed interesting details about Tanya's background. She was known for latching onto wealthy men, using her marketing skills to amplify both their public image and her own bank account. Eliza's suspicions about her husband's infidelity were horrifyingly confirmed. Though heartbreak threatened to overwhelm her, a grim sense of validation spurred her on. She compiled every piece of evidence, photos, timestamps, even suspicious financial transactions from Donovan Capital to a shell consultancy that Tanya had set up. Patricia Chen's response, upon reviewing the material, was swift and practical. This is more than enough to build a case for marital misconduct. If you file for divorce, you could challenge the new will on grounds of fraud or undue influence. Eliza's initial inclination was to file immediately, but she paused. The baby was due in just a few weeks. The stress of a legal battle could pose health risks, and she needed to ensure the child's safe arrival. Still, she knew time was of the essence. Spencer's betrayal was deepening with each passing day. After several tearful conversations with Patricia, Eliza decided to wait until after the baby was born. By then, she would have established paternity and could demand child support, potentially a substantial amount. Given Spencer's net worth, she didn't plan on confrontation yet, but life had other ideas. One Sunday, Spencer's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was upstairs. Normally, he never left it unattended, but a quick run to the bathroom caught him off guard. Eliza, in the midst of preparing tea, glanced at the screen. A message from Tanya flashed. "I miss you, baby. Last night was incredible. When can we talk about finalizing the will changes?" Eliza felt her stomach clench. The confirmation that Tanya knew about the will and was presumably guiding him shook her to the core. Spencer appeared at the top of the stairs, noticing Eliza's pale face and the phone in her trembling hand. Instant panic contorted his features. "Give me my phone," he snapped, stepping forward. She did, but her eyes bored into him with all the fury of betrayal. No words were exchanged in that moment, yet the silent confrontation spoke volumes. A battle line had been drawn. Each knew the other was no longer ignorant of the dark truth lying between them. The day after Eliza saw that incriminating text, tension in the mansion reached a fever pitch. Spencer tried to pretend everything was normal, showering, dressing in an impeccably tailored suit, and heading off for a meeting with a potential Saudi investor. But she could see the guilt etched into every line of his face, and it fueled her indignation like kindling tossed onto a raging fire. Once alone, Eliza let herself cry. Big, heaving sobs racked her body, the weight of emotional betrayal crashing down in full force. She was 8.5 months pregnant, her ankles swollen, her back aching, and now she had to deal with a philandering husband who had systematically shut her out of his fortune. The house felt oppressive, each lavish room a stark reminder of the illusions that had once comforted her. In between those sobs, however, a thought emerged. This is not who I am, and it's not who I will become. She had grown up watching her parents handle adversity with unwavering dignity. They had taught her that resilience was not about ignoring pain, but facing it head-on and daring to carve a path forward. With her baby's due date around the corner, she decided that path had to be forged now. She placed a call to Patricia Chen, who sensed her anguish the moment she picked up. "I need to leave," Eliza said, voice wavering but resolute. "I can't stay in this toxic environment another day." Patricia's reply was immediate and supportive. "Pack what you need. I'll arrange a temporary housing option. The moment the baby is born, we'll proceed with everything we discussed: paternity, child support, challenging his will. But keep yourself safe, both physically and emotionally." Eliza nodded, tears still slipping down her cheeks. Over the next 2 hours, she methodically packed a small suitcase: maternity clothes, important documents, the ultrasound photos, and the evidence of Spencer's affair. She also secured a binder containing her pre-labeled baby items. Lastly, she retrieved every piece of legal paperwork connected to Spencer's estate planning that she had secretly copied, tucking them safely among her own documents. She left a terse note for Spencer on the kitchen counter: "I know everything. Don't try to find me." Then, bracing herself, she walked out of the mansion's front door, shutting it quietly behind her. That sound echoed like a final knell, signaling the end of the life she had once cherished and the start of a battle for her child's future. Eliza moved into a modest rental apartment in Pasadena, arranged through Patricia's contacts. It was a far cry from the luxury she was used to, but the space provided a refuge of peace in her final weeks of pregnancy. She spent her days finalizing birth plans, occasionally meeting with Patricia and Thomas Delacroix to tighten their legal strategies. Every phone call was measured, every online search done under private browsing to avoid alerting Spencer to her whereabouts. Meanwhile, Spencer's life teetered on chaos. The morning he discovered Eliza gone, he exploded with frustration, first cursing at the staff, then tearing through the house in search of any clue to her location. He tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. Tanya, upon hearing the news, urged him to stay calm, promising him that once Eliza gave birth, they could handle the matter discreetly. She even hinted at ways to sever ties with Eliza cheaply, forgetting for a moment that a child was involved. Yet behind Spencer's bravado, a gnawing sense of dread took root. He had never expected Eliza to leave so abruptly. He had counted on her passivity, her graciousness. Now he faced the possibility that she had discovered his affair, and, worse yet, the will revisions. Fear of public scandal also weighed heavily on him. If a messy divorce became front-page news, Donovan Capital's image could take a severe hit, jeopardizing the trust of major investors. Then, one stormy evening, Eliza went into labor 2 weeks early. Alone in her apartment, she managed to call an ambulance. The paramedics rushed her to a nearby hospital, where Patricia joined her. Through a harrowing 10-hour labor, Eliza fought through the pain, clinging to the thought that her baby deserved a loving, secure environment, even if that environment had to be built from the ground up, without Spencer's cooperation. A baby girl, Olivia Grace Donovan, was born just after dawn, her cries echoing through the hospital corridors like a triumphant anthem. Eliza held her daughter in trembling arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. Despite the heartbreak and betrayal, she felt a surge of unconditional love so powerful it eclipsed all else. She resolved, then and there, that Olivia would never want for care or support, no matter what legal battles lay ahead. News of the birth reached Spencer within hours through an anonymous tip that might have come from a hospital employee who recognized the name Donovan. But rather than rushing to see his child, he hesitated, torn between resentment over Eliza's sudden departure and the fear of confronting the damage he'd done. In his hesitation lay the seeds of his ultimate downfall. True to her plan, Eliza wasted no time. Within days of Olivia's birth, Patricia Chen filed the necessary legal motions, a petition for divorce, a request for full custody, and an aggressive claim to contest the revised will. Additionally, the filings included an acknowledgement of paternity, forcing Spencer to either confirm or deny that Olivia was his biological child. Given Eliza's evidence of Spencer's infidelity and the suspicious timing of the will changes, Patricia argued that Spencer had acted under undue influence and fraud. Spencer, blindsided, found himself juggling urgent crises. Donovan Capital faced a risky shift in the market, with some investors unnerved by the swirling rumors of his marital scandal. Tanya attempted to manage the firm's PR damage, but word leaked that the once-power couple was now embroiled in a bitter dispute. The tabloids salivated over every morsel of gossip, publishing headlines like "Millionaire Donovan's runaway wife," "Love child caught in the crossfire," and "Shocking will, wife disinherited before baby's birth." In a panic, Spencer hired a team of high-profile lawyers. Their initial stance was combative. They tried to paint Eliza as volatile and irrational, claiming she had abandoned the marital home without cause. But Eliza's counsel swiftly countered by producing the timeline of events, photographic evidence of the affair, and documentation showing the suspiciously timed will modifications. The court of public opinion began to swing in Eliza's favor, painting her as a betrayed wife left to fend for herself while pregnant. Feeling cornered, Spencer's lawyers recommended immediate settlement talks. If the matter dragged on, Donovan Capital risked losing its most significant investors, who detested scandal and unpredictability. Spencer, however, still believed he could maintain control. He refused to concede to Eliza's demands, balking at the thought of handing her a large chunk of his fortune. Tanya continued to whisper reassurances in his ear, vowing they could still manipulate the situation if he would only stay firm. Yet each passing day saw Eliza's case strengthen. The more the attorneys for Donovan Capital probed into the matter, the more they realized how precarious Spencer's legal position was. And behind the scenes, a new wave of revelations threatened to break the final thread. Spencer clung to his carefully manicured image of a successful entrepreneur whose personal life had no bearing on his professional domain. The legal battle escalated further when Eliza's investigator, Thomas Delacroix, discovered significant financial discrepancies within Donovan Capital. Nothing overtly criminal at first glance, more so evidence that Spencer had been channeling corporate funds into personal ventures, including his hush payments for Tanya's lavish lifestyle. On top of that, a few overseas deals had skirted ethical lines, if not legal boundaries. Some of these deals involved questionable shell companies that existed solely to funnel money into hush-hush expansions, circumventing the typical investor oversight. Although not directly relevant to Eliza's divorce proceedings, the broader scope of these revelations had the potential to damage Donovan Capital irreparably. The moment these details surfaced, large institutional investors began to fret about compliance risks, especially in the face of swirling media scrutiny. The share value of Donovan Capital, a publicly traded entity, started to plummet as speculation ran rampant. Inside the firm, employees whispered about a possible meltdown. Morale dipped. Key managers resigned, concerned they might be implicated in potential investigations. Tanya Morales found her influence waning. Despite her best PR spin, she couldn't stop the public outcry and investor panic from mounting. In desperation, she tried to isolate Spencer from the chaos, urging him to focus on controlling the narrative, but the cracks had grown too large. Spencer raged against the tide, pumping money into damage control efforts. He hired crisis management teams, scheduled hasty press conferences, and attempted to reassure investors that his personal affairs had no bearing on Donovan Capital's core operations. However, the negative headlines combining scandalous personal betrayal with allegations of corporate malfeasance proved too potent a poison. One by one, major deals evaporated, partners withdrew, and even his largest backer threatened to pull out if the fiasco continued. To add salt to his wounds, Eliza's legal team capitalized on the meltdown, presenting it as further evidence that Spencer's judgment was compromised. Their narrative was that he'd begun mixing personal indiscretions with business decisions, creating a toxic environment that endangered his own child's future. Public sympathy soared for Eliza, who stood by quietly, caring for the newborn Olivia while Spencer's empire crumbled around him. Behind the scenes, Spencer's attorney cautioned him that every day spent fighting a losing battle with Eliza only escalated the cost, both financially and reputationally. Tense settlement negotiations loomed on the horizon. Meanwhile, Spencer could only watch in horror as his once mighty fortress of wealth and influence began to collapse, brick by brick, all thanks to the seeds of betrayal he had sown. A tense hush blanketed the downtown Los Angeles courthouse as Spencer and Eliza arrived for what was supposed to be a routine settlement hearing. Reporters thronged outside, cameras flashing, hungry for a sensational snippet of the million-dollar drama. Security guards maintained a perimeter, and Spencer's face looked pallid as he slipped through a side entrance, evading the paparazzi. Eliza arrived calmly, supported by Patricia Chen, and cradling baby Olivia in her arms. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors, the two former spouses locked eyes for the first time in months. An overwhelming silence settled between them, each carrying the weight of heartbreak and resentment. Spencer looked at the baby, who gurgled innocently, and for a fleeting moment, genuine regret washed over him. He could see the family he had so thoroughly destroyed in the most selfish way imaginable. Once inside the judge's chambers, Eliza's team laid out their terms. She demanded full custody of Olivia, a significant monthly child support sum, and a fair share of Donovan Capital's assets, especially considering the initial will that had disinherited her altogether. Spencer's attorneys tried to counter, but the evidence against him was damning. His affair was public knowledge, the suspicious financial maneuvers well documented, and he faced an uphill battle, convincing a judge that he was acting in good faith. Unable to refute the avalanche of proof, Spencer finally acquiesced, his voice choked with anger and humiliation. The official decree, Eliza received primary custody, with visitation rights extended to Spencer only under mutually agreed conditions. Additionally, the court ordered him to pay substantial child support that reflected his once enormous net worth, though that fortune was rapidly shrinking day by day. But the biggest blow was the judge's ruling on the contested will. Citing undue influence evidenced by Tanya Morales' intimate involvement in its creation, the court invalidated the revision that stripped Eliza of inheritance. The original will from early in Spencer's marriage stood, guaranteeing Eliza and Olivia a large stake in his estate. It was a crushing defeat for Spencer, one that effectively left him no recourse. The final straw came when Donovan Capital's board of directors voted to oust him from the company. With the share price in freefall, they needed a new figurehead to restore investor confidence. Spencer was forced to liquidate personal assets to cover mounting debts, legal fees, and the ballooning child support obligations. In the aftermath, Spencer found himself struggling to maintain a modest lifestyle. The Beverly Hills mansion was sold at a loss, along with his fleet of luxury cars. Tanya, seeing the writing on the wall, quietly disappeared. Rumor had it she attached herself to a tech entrepreneur who was riding a wave of success. Meanwhile, Spencer tried to salvage some dignity in smaller financial ventures, but his tarnished reputation made each endeavor an uphill climb. For Eliza, the future was uncertain but hopeful. She and Olivia moved into a comfortable home in a quiet Pasadena neighborhood, where she focused on nurturing her daughter. She also utilized her share of the Donovan estate to start a charitable foundation aimed at helping single mothers pursue educational and career goals, a cause that resonated deeply with her own experiences. Though the scars of betrayal lingered, each day with Olivia brought fresh joy, reminding her that no misfortune could overshadow the profound love she had for her child. Stripped of the empire he had built, Spencer was left to reflect on the path that had led him to ruin. In losing Eliza, he had also lost the moral center that once grounded him. The final irony was that, in trying to protect himself from a perceived threat, his own wife and unborn baby, he had triggered the very catastrophe that left him with next to nothing. In the end, Eliza's comeback was not about vengeance alone. It was about safeguarding herself and her child, refusing to be a casualty of Spencer's greed and infidelity. The blowback of karma had indeed left him penniless, both financially and spiritually, while Eliza and Olivia began building a life centered on trust, resilience, and hard-won peace. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate triumph. Spencer Donovan's downfall reminds us that no empire, no matter how vast, can stand if it's built on lies. His pregnant wife, Eliza, exemplifies courage in the face of treachery, and her unwavering resolve proves that genuine love, especially for an unborn child, can become a powerful force for justice. The dramatic twists and shocking revelations all serve as a stark reminder. Actions fueled by greed and deceit carry a heavy price. If you found this story riveting, complete with unexpected reversals, legal showdowns, and sweet, sweet karma, please hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you more thrilling tales of caution and redemption. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when our next story drops. After all, real life can be stranger and more dramatic than fiction.